You're talking about wild and crazy stuff. Of course, the Andy Kaufman thing obviously stands out along the way. And I'd heard or read that the David Letterman thing, it was real, a lot of it. Like a lot of it, I don't know if you knew exactly what the deal was or.
Well, we had an outline of what Dave and his crew wanted us to do, but it went completely off the tracks. And I've said this a bunch of times, and a lot of people don't believe it, but Andy never knew he was going to get slapped. Dave certainly never knew Andy was going to get slapped. And I didn't know Andy was going to get slapped until I slapped him.
Well, again, I know martial arts, and it was a good slap.
Oh, yeah. I knocked him right out of the chair. I slapped the taste out of his mouth.
Very real. Yeah. It was real. What I was surprised by, though, because I watched that again. I've watched it several times, but I watched it again a couple of weeks ago after we met. And that his security lets this all go on. Like, knowing that it's not what they thought, and then it just...
Well, in all honesty, nobody really knew what they thought was going to happen, except Dave, me, and Andy, and the segment producer, Robert Morton. I mean, we were the only ones that he had met with. Robert Morton was the segment producer, and he had me come into the and they were, they had bought into everything that was going on, hook, line, and sinker, because Andy had convinced them that he and I hated each other, and he couldn't even be near me, except he said, I'll go on set with him, but I don't want to, like when we were supposed to meet at 10:30 in the morning for the production meeting where the segment producer would get with us and say, hey, here's what we're going to do in these two segments. Well, when I got there for that, he came and he said, I apologize, but Andy just refused to be in the same room with you. But I've already gone over it with Andy, and here's what we're going to do. You guys are going to be on two segments. He said the first segment, Dave will show Andy making fun of wrestling from your clips on Channel 5. Then he'll show the clip of you pile driving Andy. And then you guys go back and forth. And then Dave will take a break. He said, I want you guys to be a little antagonistic, not too much, but a little bit. And then Dave will take a break. And then after the commercial break, the second segment, Andy will apologize to you for making fun of wrestling. You apologize to Andy for hurting his neck. And then Andy's going to get up and sing, What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love.
Well, that's not what happened.
No, that's not what happened. And the reason it didn't happen was because Andy and I were still having wrestling matches against each other down in Memphis and drawing big crowds. And we both wanted to continue doing that. And so Andy actually called me in my hotel room after the segment producer, Robert Morton, told us what we were going to do. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, it'll be funny. Sounds funny. I said, but you've got to know that once you and I kiss and make up on network TV, I said, that's going to be the end of you and I wrestling against each other down in Memphis.
Yeah.
And it was a long pause, and he said, man, you're right. And I'll never forget how he said it, because this wasn't Memphis lingo or whatever. He said, wonder what would happen if you just hauled off and slugged me. And I laughed. I said, oh, Andy, we can't do that. I said, first of all, they won't show it. They're taping this thing at 5:30 and not going to show it back to 11:30. They won't show me hitting somebody on network TV.
Yeah.
And I said, second of all, I'll get arrested. And I said, I got to be back in Memphis tomorrow. I can't be in jail in New York.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, you're right. But wouldn't that be great? And I said, yeah, but can't do that. And that was the way it was left. I didn't see Andy again until we sat down together on the set.
Huh.
And so when we got into that second segment, that first segment went just like they wanted it to. And then we got in that second segment. He never really apologized to me. And then I never really apologized to him, and it kept going on. And I think finally Dave, time-wise, realized, well, this has gone off the tracks, so I'm going to have to take another break and wrap this thing up, right? So he said, let's take another break, see if we can get this cleared up. And Paul Schaefer started playing the music for them to go to commercial break, and I just said to him, it was like an out-of-body experience. I don't even know what I was thinking, but I knew that was it. We're going to be gone after this. And somehow what Andy had said came into my mind, and I just stood up, looked him in the eyes, and hauled off and popped him, knocked him clear out of the chair. And poor Dave, he about went into shock. I mean, this was happening right here, and he just his
he
eyes. He had
move.
like some papers in front of him.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't even look over there. He was just like staring straight ahead, you know. And so then the security came in. They went to break, and the security took me back into the green room, and I sat back there for. When they go to commercial break, it literally lasts 2 minutes, and then they turn the lights back up, and they start the show right up again. But I sat back there for like 15 minutes, and I could hear just commotion. I mean, it was like somebody had been assassinated. People were actually screaming out there. I could hear women and someone going, "Oh my gosh, what in the world!"
And so, Memphis, they were cheering.
Yeah. And so anyway, like 15 minutes go by, and all of a sudden, and I'm the only person in the green room. And all of a sudden, the door kind of creaks open a little bit, and this little young intern kind of sticks his head and said, "Mr. Lawler?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Dave wants to know if you want to come back out and sort of wrap this thing up." I said, "Sure, be glad to." Now I'm thinking all of a sudden, I said, they must be going to show this, right? Or if they're not going to have me back out, if they weren't going to show what happened. So I go back out, and all of a sudden it was like this. There were 750 people in the studio audience, and it was like it turned into a wrestling crowd. When I walked through the curtain again, they all started booing, boo, boo. So, okay. So I sit down, and Dave is right there, and he says, "Andy?" Because they're going like 10, 9, 8. He said, "Andy, are you going to come back in here?" And I'll never forget, it was like 3, and Andy says, "No, if I come in there, I'll say words you can't say on TV." So boom, we came back on, and Dave says, "Well, I'm here, Jerry Lawler's here, and Andy's sort of here, and all of a sudden here comes Andy, and over Dave's shoulder, and he lets loose. If you want to see this, the unedited version, you go to YouTube and just punch in Lawler, Kaufman, Letterman, unedited. But he lets loose with this stream of obscenities.
It was impressive.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. And I mean, like I said, this is network TV.
Yeah.
750 people in the audience. David Letterman, me, and he's on there with this dropping the F-bomb. I mean, everything. And I just looked him in the face, and I'm thinking, what in the hell are you doing, Andy? You can't. It's a miracle they're going to show the slap, but this they cannot show.
Yeah.
So why are you doing it? So with my body language, I just kind of leaned back. I crossed my legs and just to show my disgust with what he was doing, right?
Yeah.
And he just keeps on, and then he reaches over. And the funny thing, you go back and watch it, he reaches and he grabs Dave's, everybody said it was coffee, but anyway, it was actually water. He grabs Dave's cup of water, and he holds it up like showing me, hey, I'm going to get ready because I'm going to throw this, right?
Yeah.
And then he throws it, and I move out of the way, and he runs off again, and then that was the end of that segment. Uh-huh. So the security guy grabs me after that, and he didn't take me to the green room. He takes me to the elevator, and he said, "Mr. Lawler, I want to get you out of here." He said, and he'll never forget. He said, "Because that Kaufman's elevator don't go all the way to the top. He'll have you arrested. So I'm going to get you out of here and back to your hotel." So we go downstairs, and this is Rockefeller Center. We go downstairs, and I head out, and I didn't hear a word from anybody until the show came on at 11:30. And turn it on, and they showed everything, even all the the funny thing, they didn't beep out the cursing. They put in, instead of a beep, they put in, that made it even funnier. You could of course read Landy's lips and tell exactly what he was saying, but over the cursing they put the sound of like a cuckoo clock. So and it goes cuckoo, 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 and it just made it hilarious.
Yeah.
And I mean, and everything blew up. It's like today you would say, "Oh, it went viral." I mean, back in those days, this was in 1983. Things weren't viral yet, but I mean, it was the talk of not just the wrestling world, but it was a talk. David Letterman told me later on when we did the movie version with Jim Carrey. Dave told me, he said, for years we referred to that as the famous show. And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because that show made us famous." He said, he said, "That was our first year of Late Night with Letterman." And he said, "I'd already had 4 other shows that were flops."
Yeah.
And he said, that show made us famous.
Huh. I didn't realize that about the late night show with him.
Yeah.
Huh.
out.